Good morning, everybody. It is 12 o'clock. It's Thursday, the 7th of July, and this is the BCP Council Leaders Q&A. Apologies that we've had to do this on a Thursday again this week. Unfortunately, I was out of action yesterday due to a court case that we were involved with, which gave me the whole day sitting in a courtroom, something I've never experienced before, but it was really interesting. I learned loads of stuff, and I came back to 100 extra emails when I went back online at the end of the day. So a huge thanks to my lovely PA Jane, who is watching, for the work she did to try and get some of them dealt with before I came back online last evening. We're now obviously into, what is this now, our fifth month of a COVID world. Some things are beginning to get back to normal, and as a result, things have changed for us in a lot of ways. Some things are getting back to normal. Obviously, shops are now open. Hospitality is now open in a new form, and lots of people are getting back to work, which is great. So I fully expect that there will be more people watching this later this evening than during the day, but it's really important that these carry on as a way of you talking to me and me sharing with you, and by doing it by day, it also allows our team to be able to support this. A few changes. Obviously yesterday we had this mini budget, which I don't know about you, I found slightly strange. I'm assuming that a lot of us are going to be spending our August supporting local businesses, but the really key message for us as a local authority is that we're saying please stay local, shop local, please support all your local businesses, local hotels, local pubs, and where you can, try to support businesses that are coming back online, because apart from the fact that we need them and they are the people who live and work in our communities, it's far more environmentally sustainable for us to stay in the local area. So no questions have come up yet, so I'm going to chat away for a bit longer. 4 of our libraries are now open. So we have the main libraries in Bournemouth, Poole, Christchurch and Kinston Hub are now open, slightly reduced hours, but if you do live in another area where you're waiting for your library to open, there are collection services available. Remember, your library cards are valid to use in our other libraries, so please do feel free to go to our main libraries and use those facilities and get your books back. If you do have books that are out on loan, I got an email about my own books that are out on loan for me and my kids. You won't be getting any fines until your libraries reopen. I believe all the books have been renewed now until September. So if you still haven't read the book that you took out in March to read during lockdown, you've still got a bit longer. I managed to get through my first book, which was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm now working my way through The Shining, and I'm determined not to watch the film until I've read the book. So, yellow buses have been letting people on their buses without masks and not even challenging them. Their management policy is not to challenge. Claire, we have raised this with with both of our bus companies, Moorbus and Yellow Buses. There are a lot of people who are carrying exemption cards, and it's very difficult for a bus driver to establish whether someone is exempt from wearing a mask. There are lots and lots of exemptions, and there are equalities issues about challenging somebody, particularly where you've got an invisible disability. So it has been raised with them. They do know it's their responsibility, but ultimately it is not for the council to dictate what they do. I think Moorbus have got a sunflower card, but we'll raise it again, but unfortunately they are independent. They're not subsidiaries of the council. When will I be able to open my soft play cafe? Oh, Jodie, I've been talking to the people at Lima Landings about this and some of the others. I wish I knew the answer. It's very strange, the sorts of businesses that are allowed to open and others that are not. Swimming pools not being allowed to open when actually they're a lot more hygienic than other places, and you can manage the numbers. My children are swimmers, so we're feeling the pain of not having swimming pools open. But soft play is such an important part of younger children, social life. I really don't know the answer. We're just going to have to keep lobbying for organisations like your own. We are lobbying around special packages for the leisure industry and special furlough schemes. Those areas are really important to us, not just for our local community, but as a tourist area. What do you do if you notice a pedestrian crossing is out of order? Mark, our website's really, really intuitive around lots of things you can do on it. And I would encourage all residents, if you see things like a pedestrian crossing, a traffic light out of order, a pothole, a street light, you can go onto the website. The website is currently split into Poole, Christchurch and Bournemouth. If you're not sure which former council area you live in, you put your postcode in and it brings up the right site. You go into the report it function and you can report virtually anything. I would encourage you, rather than contacting me or your ward councillor, if it's a one-off, please use the report it function, because it goes straight into the workflow of the appropriate team and it speeds things up. If you've got a persistent problem, so something you've reported and hasn't been actioned, that's when you need to bring your ward councillor in, and they can usually sort of kickstart things. But if a pedestrian crossing's out of order, go onto the website, report it. There's also our customer services team, but it's usually easier to use the website because you can actually put a little pin in and say exactly where it is, what exactly the problem is. So I definitely would recommend doing that. So I'm saying a big hello to Sam, who's joining us. Joins us most weeks. And Sam, I've given a lot of support to over the years, so it's always nice to see him engaging and stuff. Is the council looking to create cycle lanes and reduce car parking on high street roads? Yes, 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 yes. We've been given about £315,000 at the moment to create short-term cycle lanes and pedestrian projects. They are emergency procedures. In order to be eligible, you had to be able to bring them in within 4 weeks, and they have to run for up to 18 months, but reviewable after 6 months. So some of the projects you've seen and people have been a bit frustrated about, saying, why didn't anyone consult us? We give a 7-day consultation, and then the consultation carries on during the 6 months, and you're able to constantly update us and tell us what you think. This is the way the government have set up this project, and this is how the funding is linked. So it's really important that we do respond in the way that's appropriate. We would normally have a much longer period of consultation. That is for a permanent traffic regulation order. None of these temporary projects can become permanent unless they go through the full process. So if they are successful and popular, and we do see a difference in people's use of them, they can be made permanent, but only when they go through the full process. This will then enable us to have the evidence to prove whether they work or not. Okay, Mark, yes, nutty completely. I like a bit of head stuff. Have the homeless been put back on streets? I am really, really proud of our homeless team. So let me give you some figures. We housed 250 people who were homeless during the early weeks of the pandemic. Of those 250, let me see if I get my facts right on this, we have moved on 76 into some form of positive improved housing, whether that's private rented, supported, social housing, or more permanent, if there is such a thing, as more long-term temporary accommodation. Every one of those 250 people have received basic health checks. Where they weren't registered with a GP, they now are. Where they required medical treatment, we've provided that. They've all got dedicated support and a housing pathway plan. Only 5 of those individuals have chosen to go back on the streets. Only 5. And we have had some really brilliant stories. Somebody signed up for the armed forces and is moving on to the armed forces soon. Other people have gained employment. Many of them are now off drugs and alcohol. Some of them have stopped offending. Having 3 meals a day provided has really improved health and well-being. People are now inspired to actually try and change their life in a lot of cases. We only have an average, depending week to week, 15 to 20 individuals who are now rough sleeping. All have been offered accommodation. They've all refused for their own reasons, and it's not our job to force people into accommodation. But what I would say is, if you do see people who are homeless, then giving money isn't always the right thing to do. There are ways and means of supporting the homeless through our various projects with St Mungo's, the Faith Works projects. We have a homelessness reduction board that brings all of the voluntary sectors together, the council, the police, the business improvement districts, and I would encourage people to engage with those processes rather than hand out cash. If you hand out cash and we are housing them, we're already giving them 3 meals a day, so you can't be sure that the sandwich that you think you're buying is buying a sandwich. and people obviously have choices of what they do with their money. We're doing our very best to make sure that all of those individuals have a plan and to keep them off the streets and give them some meaningful experiences, get them back into work, get them back into a positive relationship with society. So I'm really proud of the work that's been done, and we're working at the highest level. There's a project being led by Dame, I can't remember, one of the dames, around Dame Louise, somebody, and she's doing some work to try and get rid of homelessness on a permanent basis, and we're really engaged with that, so I'm really proud of that. We have just started our consultation on the PSPO that's currently in pool to amend it to remove things that were specifically targeting the homeless, which we're really uncomfortable with. So what it will do is it will target aggressive begging, street drinking, antisocial behaviour, but it will no longer target, if we get this consultation through, things like having a receptacle out. We don't believe that that's something which is fair, because it targets people who are potentially homeless. We should be targeting the behaviours and not the people, and that's what we're trying to do. Then we'll be looking at a wider PSPO, which is a public space protection order around alcohol, and we're looking at the whole of BCP so that we can actually address some of the problems we've got with alcohol related behaviour, whether that be at the beach, whether that be at Ashley Cross, whether that be in Boscombe or in other communities. It won't look at a ban on alcohol. I don't think that's not something that's helpful. I'm sure there are loads of us who will enjoy having a drink with a picnic, or, you know, a glass of bubbles while we're at the beach hut. Yeah, that to me feels like overkill. But actually looking at addressing alcohol-related antisocial behaviour and the ability to remove alcohol from people where they're engaged in alcohol-related antisocial behaviour wherever they are in BCP, not just in small areas. That's what we're going to be working on next, should be coming forward in September. Gym helps you with your mental state. We don't control when gyms can open. I totally get that. You know, my personal trainer I was working with at Littledown is obviously not able to work there at the moment. We're trying to get me ready for the London Marathon. I'm now on my own on the streets. Rubbish. I'm really struggling with this hot weather training, but we'll get there. Gym totally helps you with mental state. In the short term, my advice would be get out there in the big wide world, run on the beach, run on the heathland, run in the woods, do whatever you can to improve your mental state. I personally listen to podcasts while I'm running. I find that really helps me. Human waste left behind the green at Holborn. Sandra, if it's related to the recent, if this is today, it should have gone, because we have dealt with dealing with the waste after travellers. Our team go in and they work really hard to get rid of anything that's left over from travellers, and if something's been missed, perhaps the local councillor could pick that up that's from the area. Do you know why waste bins are £47 in Bournemouth and Christchurch postcode is 37? So Christchurch actually came to the project a bit later, so for this year there is an adjustment because they weren't able to join until April, because until April Christchurch was under the Dorset Waste Partnership, so therefore they haven't got the whole season. So by the time we get to next year, Nick, and we're into full harmonisation, it'll be equalised across the area. The only thing that will be slightly different is the size of the bin in Bournemouth is different than in the other areas, because historically the councils bought different size bins, and buying the same size bins just to harmonise the size of the bin would cost £300,000, which ultimately would mean everybody would have to pay more for their green bin, because we'd have to pass that cost on. The cost of your waste bin is related to the cost of collection, not the cost of getting rid of what's inside. So it's physically, if your bin is picked up 30 times, then your cost will be more than if your bin is only picked up 20 times, which is the difference between Bournemouth and Christchurch. Will it be possible to use the beach hut you've booked for the last week of next month? So regarding beach huts, at the moment we've had to cancel the short-term beach huts. The reason for that is that for things like hotel bookings, and the same would be true of beach huts, there has to be a lay-down period in between bookings. So with a hotel, you can unbook somebody's hotel room number 27 and put them in number 30. We don't have that. You book a specific beach hut. So what we've had to do is cancel the beach huts in the short term, and we've actually got a programme of being able to rebook some people into beach huts for longer periods. We can't book by the day or the week because we have to have this gap in between. So people who have had a beach hut, there will be some more communication coming out. Please deal with Beryl bikes being abandoned. Found one resting on my car. Sammy, I know you messaged me about that. Beryl is a separate company, and they need to deal with that. But people can leave a Beryl bike wherever they wish to leave a Beryl bike. If they choose to leave it against your car, there's not a lot I can do about that. That is about people taking personal responsibility. But Beryl is such a successful scheme. It's actually the second most successful bike share scheme in the country after London. I think that's incredible. It's something we should be proud of. And we are very, very close now to opening up in Christchurch. We had to go through a process that hasn't yet completed. Thank you, Mark, for reporting your item now onto the website. Let me know how it goes. Barbara, I can't see your original message about why you're frightened to walk. I'm going to have to come back to that. Would information offer made redundant and aren't sure what help or resources are available to them? Let me look at that. Really, there are lots of other organisations that you should be dealing with around that. Job Centre Plus obviously are there for people. Our economic development team, where there are big employment companies that are taking lots of employers, we do share that through our newsletters. But I will look into what we can do for people who've been made redundant. And I'm really sorry you've been made redundant. It's a really difficult time for a lot of people. Do I respond to any of these posts? Yes, Hugh, I work my way through all of them, and if they're going too quickly for me to reach them all, then I go back this afternoon and I comment back on them. If cabinet members are on here, they'll also comment on them. We would also do holiday close to the public. I can't do an awful lot of it. Some holiday places are allowed to open. I know dance schools and things have been told they can open, but I'm afraid the detail of your business I can't really get into. But please be assured we are working as hard as we can on leisure. Just to what are we doing about travellers in Poole? At the moment, there are three or four caravans on Beta Park. I've talked about it last week, and we talk about it every year. The travellers have a right to travel. We do not currently have either a transit site or a temporary stopping place, and therefore if travellers arrive, we do not have the legal right to move them without a court order. The police have other rights, which they have discretionary opportunities to move people on, but there have to be rules around those. And the travellers that are on Beta, unfortunately, they're likely to be there for a few days. If we do get a court order, it takes 7 to 10 days for that to come through. We do legally have to do, and quite right too, we have to do a needs assessment because there are pregnant women, there are children, there are vulnerable people, and they have rights like the rest of us. Why are the council shutting Bourne Valley Youth Club? We're not shutting any youth club. So I don't know where you've got that information. We are not shutting Bourne Valley Youth Club. You can put that in print. Okay, my dad pays 42. Right. Okay, so that's about. Right. Do they have police council? Sorry, I'm sorry, Dave. I don't know what you're referencing to about. Do they have police council and public meetings to discuss issues? You're going to have to be. When's the cinema going? Old Argos. As you can imagine, Paul, everything's changed with COVID. We need to look at the whole project for the town centre. That was an L&G project who actually run the Dolphin Centre. I'm afraid I don't have an update on that at the moment. I'm sure we'll get an update in due course. Please, I love cycling. I'm opposed to cycling things on the prompt. So July and August, we always ban cycling between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. That is in place now. You can cycle before 10 or after 6 along the prom. So if you're going out for the day, go out early, come back late, you can absolutely cycle. But please do take care. Pedestrians do have priority. We are looking at all sorts of ways we can make that safer for everyone, but it does seem to be a perennial problem. Public grass meant to be letting people drink on the bit of grass by the cow. It's a public base. If a bar has off sales, which means they can sell alcohol to be consumed off site, and most of them in Ashley Cross do, and the government are trying to relax it so that all places do have that right during the COVID situation, you can take it into a public place. Yes, you can. Clearly, we have a problem that some people, even though there are toilets on Ashley Cross, are deciding to use in the bushes or on the platform of the railway station. That is completely out of order. It's utterly disgusting, and anyone that's doing that, please don't do it. But we have provided toilets at that site, and we are actively looking at refurbishing the permanent toilets there, because that green is now used much more around families and events in the summer. And so we're actually looking to reopen those that were closed 3.5 years ago by the previous council. I run Paul Mumbler news page. I'm here to support local businesses. I'd love to support. Okay, I'm sure I'll ones to pick up. Okay. How many staff are still furloughed, and how does this affect your offering? So, Carlos, the number of people still furloughed is tiny now. The people that are furloughed are generally coming two categories. Either they are people that work for the leisure centre and are either swimming teachers, football coaches, gym instructors, and therefore they work for us and multiple other organisations for a few hours a week. They cannot work because our leisure centres are closed, therefore they are furloughed. They can't be redeployed into a full-time job somewhere else because they're not full-time employees of us. They will work for multiple organisations. The other group of people who are furloughed at the moment are our school crossing patrollers and our drivers for children who are normally driven to school, often children who have got disabilities or additional needs. Most of those children are not at school. They're not going back to school till September. Schools aren't operating properly till September. Therefore, the school crossing patrols aren't functioning. That is the majority of our staff. The vast majority of other staff are no longer furloughed. Anybody that's in a role that is active is working. Thankfully, to a tree falling across footpath. No problem. Please report those sorts of things. We really do on them very, very quickly. Help for sole trader, small business, especially for taxi. I'm really, really angry that yesterday the government did not actually make any specific additional plans around business. I've got a meeting tomorrow, I think, with our team around the work that we've already done to provide grants for thousands of businesses, to see what's left in that grant fund and see who it is we're able to support. The money we've been given does not cover all businesses, and we have to carefully look at how we can add the most value. But obviously, if you're a sole trader and self-employed, then you should have been able to qualify for the self-employed income support scheme. If you haven't applied for that, then I don't know whether that's closed, but that's what you should have done. To receive a supply of food waste bags. Mary-Louise, I will, comms, if you're listening, could you arrange for that for me, please? Right, positive homelessness. What do you regenerate pool? Oh gosh, Alison, where have you been? We're doing so much to regenerate pool. We have a £25 million bid into the Future High Streets Fund. That is concentrated around the central and lower high street and the cultural area of Poole. We're waiting to hear if that bid's been successful. We've just agreed to purchase the power station site. That's due to go through within the next, hopefully, fingers crossed, few weeks, which will develop a whole new neighbourhood, which will help to regenerate the centre of Poole. This Poole Stadium has got a proposal around regenerating that. And the main Poole Town Centre itself, we're rebooting the Heart of Poole scheme, which will see us be able to completely regenerate the centre of Poole. So it's absolutely not the poor relation to Bournemouth and Christchurch. If anything, there's been a lot more energy going around Poole in the last 6 months than there has been anywhere else. And there's a little bit of criticism about why we're not doing enough for Bournemouth. I would disagree with that. I think we're working across the whole piece. So please keep an eye on what's happening. There is a member group that's dedicated to the centre of Poole, and there's some really exciting things going to be happening. Why have we closed down bus stops and put multiple services same stop? We're not anti-bus. What on earth makes you think we're anti-bus? Sorry, I don't agree with that. We are so pro-bus, you would not believe it. Our Transforming Cities Fund is dedicated to cycling, bus and walking, £79 million to actually create additional bus lanes, bus gates, and reduce the journey time so that it increases bus patronage. This area is one of the most growing area for buses prior to COVID. So I think that's very strange. You probably need to speak to the bus companies about that. What happened to the cinema being built in Poole High Street? I've already covered that. Boots and 4,000 jobs. Oh, that's heartbreaking. My daughter works for Boots. She's just been to her job going to end in July, which is really gutting for her because she was hoping it would see her through to when she goes to university, but that explains why she's losing her job at the end of the month. Great. Can public events happen in the BCP area? We haven't yet made an announcement. We have said no public events until the end of August. We will shortly be making a decision about the next stage, but really we need to hear from the government how they feel about large events. They haven't yet said a thing. We'll follow that up. I know stop of the library. Emma, could you raise that? Emma Starr, please raise that with your ward councillor. That's exactly what ward councillors should be bringing up. Their job is to represent the local area, so please go to them. If you don't get any joy with your ward councillor, feel free to come back to me. Poole is a beautiful part of the country. Why would anyone want to visit Poole? I think it's great. But if you don't think people want to visit Poole, there's loads for visitors. We've got Poole Museum is the most visited free attraction in the whole of Dorset. Did you know that? Scaplan's Court, absolutely incredible place. Definitely recommend Scaplan's Court. We've got amazing boat trips from Poole Quay. We've got Brownsea Island. We've got some brilliant pubs and restaurants. Da Vinci's have just put that amazing outdoor seating area on Poole Quay. Over the next few years, there's going to be so much money invested in Poole. We have the Lighthouse, which is the largest arts centre outside of London, which does the most incredible things with the home of the BSO. Why wouldn't you think Poole is brilliant? When you shut Bourne Valley Youth Centre, we are not shutting Bourne Valley Youth Centre. Please, Michael, would I stop saying it? What is my yearly salary? Councillors receive an allowance, and you can see that on the website how much councillors receive. When the bin men get pay rises, bin men are part of the local government salary scheme, and it is nationally negotiated. The unions are currently working with all councils across the country to negotiate their pay rises. Can I let you know discretionary grant outcomes will be finalised? So most of the discretionary grants have now been paid. There are a few where there are some outstanding bits of information, and when that comes in, they will be paid where they're eligible. Sadly, lots of the applications were ineligible. Some of them were because it clearly said on the application you cannot apply if you've had another grant. We had hundreds where people, well, maybe scores, dozens, lots, where people had had another grant and they were ineligible. Another condition was you had to have lost a certain amount of your income. People were told that was, they then were ineligible because they hadn't lost the amount of income. So there were very clear rules around it, and people unfortunately weren't eligible. We are looking at a second round shortly, but we don't know what that's going to look like because we want to reflect what's still outstanding. How can you get a green bin? You can apply online for a green bin. If you go onto your website, your section of the website, you can apply there. Are pavements of roads being done in BH10 and BH11 as they're terrible? Again, bring up specific roads with your ward councillor. Susan, I think you're in Kinson. You need to speak to your ward councillors. There are a number of key pavements being done, but pavements are part of the overall maintenance of roads, and where a road is dealt with, often the pavement is dealt with. But the package that we get, we just had £4 million for some of our major roads. That will cover 6 roads. It's incredible how expensive that sort of thing is. So unfortunately, it isn't possible to do everything quickly as we would like. Are swimming pools opening soon? I don't know. Last week, somebody put the Swim England petition on here. If you haven't signed it, go and find it. Swim England website. Please sign the petition and get swimming pools open, because they're really, really important for health and well-being and for sport. Bin men are heroes. Absolutely, bin men are heroes. Communal areas of flats going to be cleaned. If they are Bournemouth or like social flats, then I will raise that. I'm sure it's to do with social distancing. Most flats are privately or housing association owned. You need to speak to your landlord. Okay, successfully reported. There you go then. We seem to be inundated with people with antisocial behaviour issues. Yes, unfortunately, there are some pretty crappy people with a lot of problems at the moment. You know, they're struggling. They've got mental health problems. They've got addiction issues. We're not dumping everyone in one area. I think I know where you're from, Janice, because I think you've been communicating with me about a lot of things. If we have to house people in an emergency, we have to house people where it isn't going to cripple the council to actually do so. So, you know, it is a sort of chicken and egg. We're working with the police and we're working with the local communities to try and improve antisocial behaviour everywhere. Fantastic news about the new learning support centre that was passed by the council this week. Thank you, Mark. Bournemouth Learning Centre is going to be converted into a special school. This is so important. I just want to quickly cover the issues here. So many of our children that need special school education are going out of area. We've got people who are going out to Wiltshire and Hampshire and Dorset, spending up to 2 hours sitting in a minibus or a taxi to get to their school, because there isn't a school in the local area that meets their needs. That is not good for those children. It is not good for their parents. It's not good for anybody, and it's costing you, the taxpayer, a lot of money, because we spend £6.5 million a year on the transport to get the children to those schools, and then we have to pay for those special schools, of which cost up to £100,000 a year. So it's really important that we keep our children near their homes. They can then socialise with children who come from the local area. If you're going to a school in in North Bournemouth and you're only living in Bournemouth Pool or Christchurch, the chances are that your parents can organise play dates, you can actually have social time together. If you're going out to the north of Wiltshire for your school, the chances are outside of school you're not mixing with those kids. So that's not good for your mental well-being and your emotional health. It's also really good that we're able to offer a wider range of needs locally. So if children need to move into a special school, there's the opportunity for them to move out again if their circumstances change, if their emotional state changes, if it's an emotional issue that they've got, if the ability of their local school improves to be able to cope with that. The other thing we're doing apart from this is there are about 5 local schools that are taking on bases that will enable children who would otherwise have to go to a special school to stay in their local school but be educated in a satellite within their local school, even for part of the day. That is so, so important for the well-being of children. So we are passionate on making things better for all children, but particularly for children who are living in difficult circumstances, whether that's because they've got additional social, emotional, medical or disability issues, and also children who have issues around social care, and we need to provide care for them in terms of providing them with a family. Where do we report barbers that aren't following PPE government guidelines? Any business that's not following the guidelines, if you go to Trading Standards, again, you can contact Trading Standards through our website. We can be one that's not actually okay, we're running out of time. It's just gone 30:30. Consultation meetings with the police and council. Thank you, David, for actually clarifying that. There always were safer neighbourhood team meetings in Poole. There were different things in Bournemouth. At the moment, public meetings are suspended, but the councillors are due to be having meetings within their neighbourhood teams with the police. So I would encourage you to engage with your ward councillor, and they will be able to represent you at those meetings until the public ones reopen. Kyle, nice to see you. I used to work with Kyle when I was financial services. Paul, our old school car park is shared with residents and school staff. Car park is empty. Residents would like to use it. Stephanie, I would suggest you go to your ward councillors. You have 3 ward councillors in Poole, and this is exactly the sort of thing you should bring up with them. Once the discretionary fund has been agreed was to be given, to see how it was given, I will double check. I'm not quite sure what the rules are on that, but if it is, I'm sure we can. Okay, Michael, for the 3rd and final time, we are not closing the Bourne Valley Youth Centre. Okay, I'm not going to repeat myself anymore. You've got bad information. Is anything happening with the beaches, like prepaid parking and closures? Okay, I'm going to finish on the beaches. We've worked really, really hard. We worked really hard before the last influx. We are designed to take hundreds of thousands of people. That is our job as a tourist town. What we couldn't deal with 2 weeks ago was the disgraceful behaviour by some of the people who came to our town, who fly parked, I mean, that's a term I'd never heard of before, who dumped their car in the middle of a roundabout or on a pavement or blocking people's driveways. That's just pure antisocial. It's just wrong. There were people who were coming and didn't even attempt empty bins. They just dumped their stuff on the sand. Wouldn't have mattered how big the bins were, how many the bins were. There were plenty. Wouldn't have mattered how many times we emptied the bins, more than usual. They wouldn't have done it. There were people behaving in a disgusting manner. We had, a loss of life the week afterwards. We had some really nasty, violent incidents from people coming down. Those sorts of things are really difficult to handle on your own, which is why we called the major incident. The major incident enables all of the authorities to work together, and we're now doing that. It's on standby, so if we know that there's going to be an influx of visitors, we can actually make sure that there are enough police and people in the same way. But no, we're not planning on organising prepaid parking. That would have a huge impact on the 400,000 people that live here. And no, we can't close the beaches and we can't close roads unless we give 7 days notice of closing a road. If we believed closing a road or 2 would help, we would do it, but we don't believe it would help. What we are doing is we're recruiting extra traffic wardens. We're looking at tow-away powers, we're looking at clamping powers. We cannot increase the price of fines. That is set by central government. And thank you to Connor Burns, who is working with us to try and get that legislation changed. It would be completely impractical to put ropes around 2-metre areas on the beach. You keep sending me this. Have you not seen the tractors? We clean our beaches every day so that we can retain blue flag status. How on earth would we be able to do that if we had to spend 3 or 4 hours every day knocking posts into the sand for a 15-mile stretch of beach? It's just totally impractical. So we have more beach wardens and beach patrol. Our kids zone has opened early, recognising that there'll be more families, children not being at school. We have recruited security to support the staff on the beach. Our CSAS officers who work with the police have got the right now to go across the whole of BCP. There is lots and lots that's being done, but no, the plan is not to organise prepaid parking and close roads. If car parks get full, we've got the ability to put people on those car parks and redirect traffic, and we're looking at ways and means of doing that. But a lot of the ideas that have come up with aren't practical or aren't legal. The ones that are sensible are being taken forward, and I am looking at a completely new strategy for 2021, because what we have to remember is that the team that are actually running the beach are busy running the beach, and actually changing policy takes weeks or months. It takes a lot of back office work to do, and actually doing that live is incredibly difficult. So we are looking at what we can do for next year. There are signs about where barbecues are allowed. They're allowed after 6 o'clock, and they're allowed in limited areas elsewhere. I will ask that it's made clearer on the website about where that is. Okay, it's gone past, so I'm going to close it at that point. Just to say, I'm really thrilled that we've approved 2 sets of new council houses this week. One set in Kinston and another in Northbourne. It's really great news, people who are on the housing register, and we also approved the Winter Garden Scheme funding package so we can start getting some regeneration done in that part of town too. So I'm really, really thrilled with the way things are going, and we will be carrying on with virtual meetings. If you haven't been watching, you can see our full council meetings, our cabinet meetings, all of our other meetings are now streamed on YouTube, and you can always watch what we're up to and what we're making decisions on. So please keep engaging, please keep watching Facebook Live. Don't forget, you've all got ward councillors. They should be your first port of call with local issues. If it's more strategic, then by all means, please do contact me. But if it's a ward issue, please, it's far easier if you go to your ward councillor, or check first of all if you can go on the website, report it on the website. That's the first port of call, but I'll pick up anything else that's more strategic. Nice to see you all again. It'll be back to Wednesday from next week, and I'll see you all then. Take care.